Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Sell More Book Show, episode 478. I'm Brian Cohen from Best Page Forward, joined by Claire Taylor from FFS Media. Claire, I know you're still fighting off coughs and all sorts of things and wildebeest to be here. I don't know what's in Texas, but how are you on this fine day?
I'm winning against the wildebeests.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah. I'm doing all right, Brian. It's a launch day. I did not prepare, just for full disclosure for anyone listening. I didn't prepare for the launch day. And so it's absolutely meeting the expectations of someone who did not prepare for it or do much at all to promote it. So, I don't like the big launches. I've never liked the big launches. And this one is no different. I'm kind of like, hey, everybody, here's some books. Take them or leave them. Don't like them? Cool. Bye. Like, that's kind of my approach since I've just been dragging the last anywhere from like 1 month to like 10 years of my life. So,
well, congrats on the launch either way. You still finished a book and published it.
3 of them. 3. It's the Alice Luck series. So the first 3. I mean, this was the Kickstarter.
After the Kickstarter.
Right. So that's
yes.
another factor is that my super fans got it with the Kickstarter, and so they're not, there's not that fervor today, and there's just there are a lot of reasons why it's just kind of off to a whimper, but I'm not worried about it because that was not my strategy. So,
I noticed this with my Kickstarter books too. You just can't have a big launch because you already had a big launch.
Right. And I think it's also just important to say that your strategy doesn't need a big launch, right? Like, I'm going to make my money back. I've made a lot of it back, most of it back on the investment from the Kickstarter, but I'll make it back over time. That's my model. So
yeah, no, and being able to launch a book after you've launched it on a Kickstarter is great, because if you can even break even on the Kickstarter, you now have you're starting officially at zero. Launch on Amazon and the other platforms you launch it on, and that's a good place to be.
Yeah, totally.
Awesome. Well, if you're going to be in Dallas this week, I'm going to be at InkersCon coming up on Friday and Saturday. Excited to speak. Going to do a new presentation I've never done where I cover 3 authors who had a $90,000 plus month in royalties with Amazon ads. So I usually do the beginner presentation, so it's kind of exciting to do one that's more intermediate and advanced.
Right. That's fun. That's a lot of money in a month. I think anyone would be happy with that. And if they weren't happy with that, they have a lot of inner work to do.
Yes. We don't know what Enneagram they are, but they need it. Awesome. Well, let's get into things here. We've got our question of the week, which was, will the price change for KDP print alter how you currently sell and publish your paperback books? Dylan Lott said, haven't sold any books in well over a year or 2, so no idea. It doesn't really apply there.
All right. Deneen Miller said, nope. Honestly, I'm surprised they didn't do this last year when paper prices started to shoot up. I feel like they waited to make this decision until they knew it was necessary. But that's just my opinion. Man, I can't speak today. We're glad for your opinion.
Yes,
Deneen.
Thank you, Deneen. We'll take your opinion. And Sandra Sorensen Kint said, it will have a huge impact on my picture book. 15 cents on the chapter book for kids. And, you try to price those low. And so if you have 15 cents in there off of every copy and you sell thousands, that's certainly going to make a difference. But you can also, consider raising prices. Perhaps it's just, it is tough to make these kinds of pricing decisions as costs of printing do go up.
Yeah, definitely. I know it's hard because, do you pass it on to the consumer or do you eat that fee yourself? It's just, I don't know that there's a right choice. So it's just about figuring out which one is going to work best for you.
Yeah. Absolutely. So you can answer the question of the week over at sellmorebookshow.com or in the post in our Sell More Book Show After Party Facebook group. We'll be there. So let's go to our top story of the week. Everybody's talking about this one when they're not talking about AI. So This one is called Categorically Insane. Amazon is making big changes to both the number of categories that your books can be in at once, while also making it easier to select those categories, reports Alex Newton on his K-Linux Facebook page. For years, a book could be in up to 10 Amazon categories if you asked Amazon nicely via an email or two. But last September, Amazon began to limit the display of a book to 3 bestseller lists at a time. And since it was the algorithm that chose, it wasn't always the best for your book. The bad news going forward is you can no longer request to be in 10 categories. The good news is you'll have complete control of your 3 directly from your KDP dashboard, no emails required. In addition, categories are no longer based on BISAC translated to categories. You now choose your Amazon categories directly. It's worth noting, and at this point, existing categories up to 10 on already published books seem to stay in place until you do something that changes your metadata. So think before making a change if your book is doing well. Quote, one thing is clear, having the right market intel as to where to best place your books is again as important as it was back in the mid-2010s, says Newton. That was the time when you really had to make a good strategic decision as to how to use your 2 to 3 placements wisely. So, Claire, this has been making the rounds. Obviously, if you don't do anything to your book, it's not affected at this moment. But we've been saying for some time, are you really in 10 categories? Are you really relevant in those 10? And so, what are your opinions on this? I mean, this is a big change that changes the way something's been done for millions of books.
Yeah, I'm into it. I think it was Alex Newton who I heard talking about this, who was saying, like, it's wild that this has not been done sooner. That the system was authors individually email about their books to a person who has to change them one way or the other. Like, that's not a good system. So I think this is great. As someone who has a lot of books in the humor category that are supposed to be there, I, for one, look forward to seeing fewer bare-chested men in the top 100 on those covers because it's an easier category. There's less competition there, and so it's always, like auctioned by him or whatever, like that with a bare chest that's like in the top 100. It's like, this is not comedy. So yeah, I think that it's gonna clean up some of that, because when you really have to make those choices, taco truck just went by.
Ooh,
I know they're building across the street, so we get the good tacos out here right now.
Nice.
If you have to make those tough decisions, you want to not just go for whatever like weird low-hanging fruit categories there are. You want to make sure that the people who see your book, like who want to read your book, are going to see it. So like, get out of the humor category if you're not humor. I think that's one of the things we're going to see.
Yeah, and I have to agree with you both in this being a good thing, because we've honestly, it's so funny, we had some students reach out because the last couple months and during our recent challenge, we said, you should really go down to 3 categories because you don't get to control which ones you show up in if you happen to be ranking well. So you might as well have the choice. Then we had at least one student reach out saying, did you know they were going to do this? And I did not, but makes me look pretty prophetic saying that to a couple thousand people back in April. But I think this is a good thing. And oh man, how many emails are they going to save? How many support emails are they going to save by not having to do this manually? I think it will be a whole crap load.
Yeah. At least one crap load. It could be 2 crap loads.
Yeah.
It's going to be a lot. Yeah. So I think this is great for just clearing out some of the clutter, creating a better system. I love when Amazon creates streamlined systems. It works for everyone. So yeah, I think this is going to be really good for authors who are writing in niches. And especially, it may be a while before it becomes, completely effective because, like you said, it doesn't automatically force you to do 3. You have to go in. So existing books will stay in the 10 categories. But all the new books coming in are going to have to make that choice.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm going to twist the hot potato of wisdom that's coming out of the oven here, because we kind of already answered what we had here. Mm-hmm. Claire, for an author who's just totally scared about change and is freaking out about this for one reason or another, how would you put that author at ease?
Well, I tend to be on team specific and team targeted rather than team broad. So if you hear that, okay, now my categories are limited to 3 and you're freaking out about it, this may be a really good thing for you, because it's going to force you to decide which categories your book or your series falls into, which is just a really good mental process to have to go through. And it will put your book just in front of the right readers. One of the benefits could be that if you've been, kind of playing the game and putting your book in some categories where it doesn't really make sense to belong, you may have been getting readers who weren't the right readers, and that could be getting you, bad reviews because you're not what they wanted you to be. So I think that there is a lot of benefit in this, and there's nothing to freak out about. But I also tend to be like, there's nothing to freak out about, like, all the time about everything, because, like, if a tourniquet's not involved, it's not an emergency. So yeah, I think that this will be fine. And we've seen these changes over and over again. We don't even remember a lot of the changes that we freaked out about in, 2017, 2018. They just are the normal now, and we adjust. So, look back on what you have already adjusted to, and remember that you are adaptable and you can do these things.
I love that. Great advice there, Claire.
Thanks. All right, Bryan. With only 3 categories to choose from, what's the best way to determine which ones are the right ones?
So to figure out which 3 categories your book should be in, there's a mantra that I'm quoting from Quinn Ward, one of the wonderful coaches from Author Ad School and the Author Ad Agency. Quinn says, it's not about what is in your book, it's what your book is. Your book may have some action in it. It may have a female sleuth in it. It may have a cozy animal in it. But is that what it is? At its core, is that what the book is? I've had an author going back and forth with me saying, well, it should be in all these young adult categories and in all these adult categories. It's like, no, it's in one or it's the other. It's different characters. It's different readers. And so some of this is about knowing the terms and what they all mean. And some of this is about just making sure you are only focused on what your book is. If you take this part out of it, does the house of cards fall down? If so, then it needs to be in that one. But if it's like, I took the action out, oh, now it's just, a suspenseful romance, it's like, okay, well then it's not an action adventure as well. And so focus on what your book is.
Great advice. Now, what if someone realizes that their book is only 2 categories? Should they go ahead and use that 3rd category?
I have no issues with them just sticking with 2, I think. Mm-hmm. I'm not on team broad. I'm on team relevant specific, just like you. And I think that the more specific you are, the more relevant you are, the better chance your book has of reaching the right readers.
All right. Yeah. I mean, I like that. I would accept that if you were coaching me on that.
Oh, wonderful, Claire. I'm glad.
I would throw it in your face.
Yeah. Do we need a session here?
I need so much.
I hear you right there. All right. So we have got some pew, pew, lightning shots, bolts, and this is our longest. Oh, that was a good one. That was more lightning-y than what I've been doing. That is for sure.
Years of living in Central Texas. I know my lightning,
yes,
Bryan.
Yes, this is true. This is true. This is our longest lightning round question ever, but I had to include the whole quote. So K.M. Weiland recently said, Claire, that imposter syndrome is something that can be overcome by acknowledging our inner critic's protective motives. She said, quote, as an Enneagram 3, and therefore someone who has spent a lot of her time pondering identity, I can tell you that figuring out who you really are can often feel like looking for a needle in a needle stack. Do you agree, Claire, that imposter syndrome can be overcome?
This is a great question. So can imposter syndrome be overcome? I don't know that you ever want to overcome it, because I don't think it's a good sign if you never have that little voice in your head kind of there, right? I think Becca Syme says imposters don't get imposter syndrome. So you can use it as a good indicator that you are pushing your limits, but you don't have to try to have it never be there. And just because it's still there doesn't mean that you are somehow failing. It is just information about something that is going on in your emotions. It can be information that you are reaching an upper limit. But it's just something to be managed, and you don't have to listen to it. So that is a muscle that you can work, of hearing that inner critic saying one thing and being like, well, I hear you. I just don't think that's true. And so I'm going to do this thing anyway. And it really is a measure of courage, how much action you're able to take despite the bitterness and the failed, sort of misguided attempts of your inner critic to protect you. So yeah, it's something to manage. You can overcome it moment to moment, but I wouldn't expect it to ever be gone completely. But sometimes you can work on it and it'll feel more like a stranger passing by shouting something at you, where you're like, what, who are you? Like, no thanks. All right. Have a good day. Then, actual truth. That's really what you want to work on, is dislodging it in your brain as this sort of source of truth. Because it's not, it served a purpose when you were younger to try and protect you. And it may have worked a few times, but we don't do that. We have a big, scary job, and we got to be bold at times. So yeah, I agree that it can be overcome moment to moment. But I just don't want anyone to have the expectation that it'll be gone forever.
No, I like that. Good advice, Claire.
Okay, so now I kind of stepped into the territory of your lightning round question, but is imposter syndrome something that never goes away, comes and goes, or gets better with experience?
So I think imposter syndrome is always going to be with the non-imposters among us. I think that when you have that voice in your head saying, I'm not sure you should be here, do you belong here? It is that protective bit, but it is something that we can use to let us know when we are scared and when we need comfort, either from other people or from ourselves. And that's one of the reasons I love things like coaching. You brought up coaching, but I love coaching because when you have someone neutral who is, when you bring up, I don't feel right here, if you have someone there who brings up, okay, well, why do you think you have that feeling? Why, describe it to me, explain it. I think that when you have that kind of moment, it's almost like in Inside Out, the movie, when they say, well, why is sadness needed? Sadness is needed to bring happiness. And in this, imposter syndrome is needed to get you to get a neutral point of view to say, you are not an imposter. You are awesome. It's time to get your friends. It's time to get your fellow author cohorts. It's time to get other people into that situation, because yes, a lot of people feel imposter syndrome, but I think that you feel imposter syndrome more when you don't ever have other people helping you to shine a light on it. So I think it's a good opportunity to really have help and to have companionship in this lonely author world.
Yeah, I like that sometimes it's information telling you to reach out.
Exactly. So speaking of it, this ended up transitioning very, very nicely, Claire. It wasn't fully my intention. But Claire, I know you've been a part of some anthologies, some multi-author box sets. Do you think here in 2023 and going into the coming years, do you think anthologies, multi-author box sets are still worth being a part of.
Okay, I think that anthologies and multi-author box sets are still worth being, and sometimes, depending on where you are in your career, what the opportunity is, who is running it, what sort of, platforms are going to be combined to give it, publicity. So if you're early in your career and you don't know anyone, absolutely get in here and get to know people and be helpful and kind and generous with your time in these box sets or any multi-author, promotion. So doing that will create those connections that are going to take you to the next level eventually, or at least get you through hard times. So I think this is a great opportunity if you're newer in your career. And, if you are farther along in your career, it would really depend on who is putting it on and how much it's going to take away from your own catalog. But I don't think that they have become irrelevant with time. I think for me, they have become less beneficial with my readership growing, because I would be better served just putting out another one of my books rather than, creating an anthology like I have done a couple times, which is a lot of work. But there could be a time where my readership needs to grow again, and I do something like this to keep fresh people finding my books. And so everything's cyclical. So at this point, I'm not doing them, but I think that they still have a major purpose for a lot of people right now.
Yeah, and I love your advice on when you're a part of one of these, give a lot and be very kind, because sometimes a person who is starting their career, if they're willing to organize and they're willing to do stuff that other people aren't, they can make stronger connections and see a greater return and find more readers just by being willing to go above and beyond.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are a lot of people that show up to these box sets and just give their story, and that's it. They don't do much. They don't even frankly send it out to their lists when they're supposed to. So, and that does not go unnoticed, especially by someone like me. I have a running list in my mind.
Samesies. Yeah.
All right, Bryan. I think this is up to you. When should you pay to be part of a mastermind group versus organizing your own?
So when it comes to being a part of a mastermind, it makes sense early in your career to probably organize your own, because it is unlikely when you're right at the start of your career that throwing down a big chunk of change is going to make a significant difference in before you've even written the book. Especially if you're still just in the beginning stages, you haven't been connected in self-publishing. It's better to connect with some people and talk it out than without having invested a lot of money, because there's only so much you can do at those early stages. Once you're further on down the line, there is some benefit to joining Mastermind, but it's just like what you brought up, Claire. Who's putting it on? What's the track record? Will this actually benefit? What is being said is going to happen during this thing? Do these people have a good reputation? All of that stuff, because you need to make sure if you're going to invest, you need people who want to make sure that value is way more than what you actually paid, versus someone just organizing something because, hey, you're supposed to have masterminds, you could charge a lot of money for it, great, let's do it, and not necessarily deliver. You have to be careful, and that's why at the beginning I definitely recommend start small, then later on be cautious.
Yeah, there are plenty of people in this industry who will overpromise and underdeliver.
Oh yeah, absolutely. All right, the final lightning round question. So, Claire, what type of education, whether it be university, self-taught, University of Phoenix, I don't know, what type of education would best serve someone who wants to be an author?
If you want to be an author, I think the best education is going to be, People aren't going to like this. Reading a lot of books and getting to know yourself. Those are the two things you need to do. Because those are the things that are so underlooked. You don't need to go to college for an English degree. I did that. I tried it out for you guys. I was your try guy. And yeah, it's a very expensive way to lose passion for writing. So you don't need to do that. People who prioritize that, that's their own thing, right? If they're like, oh, you're not a real writer because you didn't get your degree, let them have their own thing. You want to get to know story. Story is just ingrained in humans. So the more you consume it, especially in a particular genre you want to write in, it will become almost this like second nature, this language that you start to understand. You'll see the patterns. You'll, start to be able to replicate it in a way that people are like, oh yeah, that is a romance or a mystery. And then you get to know yourself, because you're going to have to make so many decisions. And the best decision is always the best decision for you. So you want to make sure that you know what that is. And that is, getting to know how you work well. What times of day do you work well? Doing something like strength training or Enneagram. Those are all ways to let you know what is right for you, because a lot of people will tell you what should be right for you. And they can be very convincing about it. So you want to get to know for your, on your own, what is good for you. And I would say those two things, you can pretty much start writing as soon as you add those to your daily reps.
Yeah, I love that. And like you said, it's the pursuit of understanding yourself is so under talked about, under discussed. And I'm glad you're here, because you're always discussing it and people need to hear it.
They don't always want to hear it, but here I am saying it anyway.
That's the best thing about you. No, there's lots of good things about you, Claire. So we need a question of the week. We talked about the category thing. We talked about a bunch of other stuff. What do you want to be our question, or at least the subject?
Let's talk about imposter syndrome.
Ooh, love it.
Let's ask people when they've experienced it in this industry and how they responded to it.
That's simple enough. When have you experienced imposter syndrome in publishing, and what did you do about it?
Love it.
There we go. Yeah, you did it. So, question of the week will be over at sellmorebookshow.com. And in the Sell More Book Show After Party Facebook group. Claire, anything you want to let anybody know about before we wrap things up?
Might as well. I have an Enneagram and Fiction Masterclass coming up in early July. It's open for registration. We are going to go deep into how to use the Enneagram to write stronger characters, to write a really believable protagonist, antagonist, how to use it to write to theme, how to use it to create your climax. It applies to all of it, which is very convenient and useful. So it's going to be a 3-hour masterclass, and that is on July 8th.
Okay.
I did it.
Perfect.
And that's at ffs.media/classes.
Okay. Awesome. That sounds exciting. I hope that everybody listening takes advantage of that. Every single person.
All of y'all.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I'll have more fun things to share next week, but if you do happen to be a person who will be attending InkersCon Live, come over and say hi. We're going to have like a book marketing breakfast thing. It's going to be great.
Sounds fun.
Yeah. So for Claire, I'm Bryan. Have a wonderful week of book selling, everybody, and we'll be back next time for episode 479. Bye.
Bye.